Does Bill Burr's character jerk himself off with his robotic arm?
A weird latex horse. I'm be like, no. I feel like you should go to jail.
That's literally as old as Zeus. He banged a lot of stuff that wasn't people.
Yeah, I mean, say, well, I mean, if you think about it, if you make an autonomous sex doll, like,
and then it slides out. Don't make no goddamn sense.
Well, moving right along, I can't believe they actually showed back up for a second video. What happened?
Who's they? Anybody?
Anyone's like pretty much anyone who downloaded the first one.
Hey, if you made it to the second one, you are the realest mother. Everybody else, fuck them. You guys are the real ones. When it's, we'll never forget you, even though we don't know who you are.
But we know you exist, and that's the most important thing.
We could know who you are. You could come comment on the YouTube video and say something like second show gang or something like that, and then we know. These are the real ones. And when we're millionaires, we'll give you a plushie. We'll give you the Razor plushie that Razor's going to give Sargarrett.
They're going to give me that plushie.
We should have an intro or something.
An intro for what? Oh, yeah. Well, no. We should have an intro.
Welcome to King of the World chat, where the topics are made up and the points don't matter.
We give out points?
No, like the points that we make.
Oh.
But yes.
I thought there was an opportunity to make points. Well, I feel misled.
Then I scored points already.
All right, points on the board.
All right. It's the show about nothing. How do we know when it's over?
We'll call it 1,000 points. Seems like a good number, you know?
1,000 points to Gryffindor. That's a 50 DKP minus. You don't get any points, you just lose DKP.
Hypendor.
Hypendor. That's pretty good.
Just seems like... But that's mine, so...
Hype and more. Scamozed. Well, absolutely no one cares because it's, I doubt there's a whole lot of overlap between the people that like this kind of stuff and sports, but Texas lost. So I need to raise my spirits.
So are we going to talk about sports ball? Is that what we're going to do?
If you call it sports ball, like everybody that says sports ball says it like they're the first person to ever say it.
Well, then I guess we better get both hands on the jock strap and let's talk some sports ball.
Tax exemption.
All right, we have gone in a completely different direction. Like you're talking about, like
this is not going well as far as an intro.
We're supposed to be doing an intro?
No, that should just be the intro every time. Is we'll just try something different for the intro, and we'll never actually come up with an intro. That will be the intro.
It could work.
When we've been doing it for 2 years, we'll still be trying to come up with the intro. And those of you who made it to the second show will know the inception of this.
No. Those of you who've been there since the get-go are gonna know there was no intro for the longest time.
Or ever.
They picked a good day to jump on.
We're big in Houston.
Jump on it. Oh yeah, we're not from Houston, and neither one of us raps a lot.
We're big in Houston and in Austin.
And that is a good thing.
We're on the West Coast in San Francisco. Where the hell is Ashburn? It just says Ashburn. It's probably out in the middle of bumfuck Egypt. Virginia.
Don't say that. We don't know. You don't know where it is. Let's see.
Well, it's either Georgia, which is bumfuck Egypt.
It's in Virginia.
No offense to the people of bumfuck Egypt. We're also in Dublin, Ireland, that is. We're in the United Kingdom, Spain, Belgium, France, and then some town in the United States called Boardman.
I guess I should have gotten you a passport.
Not like you're bored, but like you're a board, like a Boardman. Boardman Bikes is the first. Oregon.
Are we really doing board jokes? Is this what we're doing?
No, I was just saying it's like B-O-A-R-D, not B-O-R-E-D, man. It's in Oregon.
Oh, okay.
That's all the places we are. We're worldwide.
Oh, is that a good or bad thing?
We'll let you decide. The viewer.
It's really up to the internet.
Well, I guess those will be the listeners.
The first episode was a pretty shitty conversation.
It was very shitty. Literally.
But not like the Dragon Ball Z live movie kind of shitty.
Oh, God. Nothing is that shitty except for maybe the Avatar movie.
That's pretty shitty, dude.
Yep.
They should just stop doing those. Like, altogether. Just straight up. No more.
I haven't seen any of his other movies. Actually, I don't remember the last time I saw an M. Night Shyamalan movie now that I think about it, but I heard someone talking about it the other day, and they said he had one that came out not too long ago. I forget what it was called, but it was good. And then they made the observation, they're like, his movies are good when he has no budget. I think it is true.
Well, yeah, because you have to be more clever with the plot.
Exactly. You have to work harder when you've got less, like...
You have to be smarter.
So you'd think it would do better when you scale with more resources, but not always the case.
That is not how it's set up. That would make sense. And making sense is not what we're here to do. All right?
Here to make dollars.
Dollar bills, y'all.
All right. So you had something to spitball with, you said, to get us going.
Oh, yeah. It's something I want.
Okay.
I want a Total Warcraft.
Oh, a Total War Warcraft.
No, I want a Total Warcraft. Don't give me that. Well, I mean, yeah, obviously it's going to have, the extra stuff from World of Warcraft because there's plenty of things to fill. I mean, have you seen the Total War map for Warhammer?
But that's what I'm saying. You mean a Total War game.
Empires, obviously. Yeah, dude, like that would be awesome. Like at least I'm not so like I haven't really looked on the Steam workshop. I guess I could go ahead and do that. I want to know if they have a or at least a mod that turns the current skins for Warhammer ones.
Well, that would be cool. But I think that goes back to what you were saying about no RTSs not being that popular anymore.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of a sad thing. So I think I'm going to be doing some videos over that just because I feel like people are really missing out. And personally, and I'm going to be honest, I also think it's good for your mental health. It's good. Oh my God, JoJo is the first thing that pops up as soon as I load Steam.
JoJo.
Yeah, Bizarre Adventure, All-Star Battle. If I had to take a guess, let's click for details. I really shouldn't, but
I've never seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
I hear good things about it all the time. It's in the loaded queue, but
I've also heard good things. And when Ninja Cat and I are looking for things to watch sometimes when we consider anime, we thought about watching that one, but I think it seems like too much fighting for her. Not that she's not completely against the like she watched a lot of Dragon Ball with me, but she's definitely like, oh, that's something that guys usually enjoy more. She's less on the she likes the drama as opposed to the action and fighting.
You should watch Akame Got Kill.
Gazoon type.
I'm just telling you, Akame Got Kill. It's everything you're looking for. It's going to have a good amount of action with the right amount of drama. It's right in the feels box. And if you've seen it, you know what we're talking about. Well, you know what I'm talking about. He doesn't know what I'm talking
I don't know.
He has no clue.
No clue.
Yeah.
So you want a Total War,
right there.
Total War Warcraft, Total Warcraft. Well, this will actually work okay. This will lead into what I had written down to talk to you about today. But on that, so like Total War games, like you have all the strategy and then you have the actual battles inside, but outside it's like part diplomacy and part
it's a board game. Like you get with Total War games, you get the fun of Civilization where the combat is something you actually really, really want to do. I mean, you don't want to do it all the time because if you did combat for every single turn, I mean, like, dude, it's not uncommon for campaigns to go 500 plus turns. That's just how it goes. Especially for those of us who complete campaigns. And I'm going to be honest, I've only ever completed one. Of all the ones I've started, I still have the files open. But dang, dude, it takes forever.
Yeah, I remember when we lived together several years ago and you would like go into your room and then emerge like 2 days later and be like, well, and I would be like, well, how's the war going? And you'd be like working on the same campaign for 2 days. And then you'd be like, had to fucking start over. Yeah. And I would be like, 2 days. Damn. It was always a saga, though.
apparently people don't like doing that. Like, you know, I work on it for 2 days. I do some really dumb shit. I'm not the kind to go, oh, I'm going to jump back into the save file.
Well, the people that like that love it. I just think that's the thing that will keep it from getting bigger than it ever. Like, that'll keep the ceiling on it. Is that it?
Yeah, for sure.
But what I was driving at is it's like how much of the overworld map is like diplomacy, and how much of it is like things that aren't like just large scale war.
Percentages. Like,
well, I just mean like the whole idea. If you don't know, like a Total War game is think of it like it's like an RTS, except the battles, which would normally be like any RTS you've played before, probably. It's stringing all those together in a giant campaign with a world map.
Yeah.
And several different factions.
Yeah.
Like outside of those actual individual battles, the elements of moving your armies around,
resource management,
dealing with the different like you said,
multitasking. Like it really, like, dude, if people played RTSs more often, you'd see more people who could multitask better. And
you make them break alliances.
Yeah. You'd also see people who micromanage a lot more too. So there's a bit of a kickback there. So yeah, kind of need to put that out there. Which not always micromanaging is not always a bad thing. It's just,
well, maybe if you were like teaching kids to play this game, but I mean, I feel like it's more that's the people it's going to attract rather than that's what it creates.
I think,
but it could do that. It'll make you better at it.
You know what I really think it is? I think RTS is still one of those like things that it's kind of like Warhammer tabletops, you know, with the figurines and, you know, a lot of people like, sure, video games are accepted, you know, they're not even going to look twice at you if you play Dungeons and Dragons anymore. Yeah. You know, but a few things are still considered on that other side of like super nerd culture, like you should be stuffed in a locker type deal things, you know. It's one of those things where it's like, well, maybe
when you're in high school, like, but adults aren't like,
you know, like that's what I think that's what the general population thinks of them still. Like, you know,
yeah, maybe.
Like, yeah.
In so much as people that like sports are like, you know, I don't think as you get older, I think people
like sports is just a musclehead, you know, moron. Like,
well, but like that, and that's what I'm saying is like when you're a kid like that, there are certain like ideas that people perceive about people that like whatever they're into. As you get to be adults, I feel like if you don't like that stuff, you just don't engage with it. And maybe people still think those kinds of things about, you know, like you said, maybe people that don't like sports see sports fans as meatheads, and some of them are. But like, you know.
Yeah, I'd say, no, you know which ones we're talking about. We all know which ones we're talking about.
You ain't playing Warhammer unless you're...
Great YouTube videos. But
you ain't playing Warhammer unless like if you think you could be like, oh, I'm not a nerd, but you're like,
oh shit, dude, I was sitting there scrolling. I've got Galactic Battleground Saga on this, man. Where's your Galactic Battleground Saga?
I've got it.
Where's your Galactic Battleground Saga?
It's basically Age of Empires 2 for Star Wars.
Yeah, that's yeah, man, that's what it is.
That's exactly
it was
an
Age
of
Empires clone that is Star Wars themed.
It's fantastic.
And I still believe that trope holds today. Bounty hunters beat Jedis and Sith. They just do.
Well, you
Except
saw
for that one time with Jango Fett and, you know, Miss Jango Fett.
No, he beat Obi-Wan. Unless you're talking about Mace Windu.
No, we're talking about Mace Windu, Lee. We're talking about bucket removal here, okay? Like...
That's Mace Windu, though.
If you slow down that scene, apparently you see his head fly out. I've never stopped to look at it yet, but I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, think about it. The kid picks up the helmet in the movie, and if it hadn't, like, it's just like, can you imagine the kid picks up the helmet and then it slides out in like a fucking, like a pork shoulder falling on your counter, a smoldering. Daddy!
Oh, man.
And then if you've seen, what is it? What's Boba Fett's show called? Just Boba Fett?
No, it's the Book of Boba Fett.
The Book of Boba Fett. Then you'd understand why he is the way he is.
Whoa, slow down. It's not his own show. That is still the Mandalorian. It's just like, you know.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those two things,
Absolutely.
The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, man, those are not just the greatest Star Wars media to be created in probably the last decade, at least, and possibly of all time. The people in charge of that show. I have not seen an adaptation of picking something up and playing with somebody else's toys and doing justice to it.
Yeah.
Man.
Gotta agree with that statement 100%.
Which directly leads into what I wanted to talk to you today. And this is something that you and I have talked about quite a bit over time.
Oh, boy.
And
it usually means very loud talking.
Oh, yes. I know this is something you're very strongly opinionated about, and something that you and I, of course, have like probably a decent idea of what the other person thinks about it. But for those who aren't aware, we're going to get into it today. So we're working on something that we're going to do as a project that will be on our YouTube channel for King of the World Chat, where we're going to do a series. And in doing some research for the first part of that series today, yesterday, whenever it was that I started, I came across some stuff that really made me think. And I was like, well, I can't wait to see what Sargarrett has to say about that. So that's kind of what we're going to get into today. Off the back of The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett being a great... These are people, some of them I think...
Hey, let's call it, for lack of a better term, let's call it picking up someone else's save file.
Well, it's more than that, because it's not just a save file. They made it, like in some cases.
Well, yeah, they're the ones who... Okay, but yeah. Well, let's continue on. So let's get...
Well, and that's what I'm saying is like, for everybody that just like to set the stage, we're talking about the Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian are two instances of a series where they took an established universe with rich world building and characters that are well established, and they made a story within that universe that did justice, that I think by and large fans and even brought new people in that were not like, it's just good. Like, I think we should look for a bad review of that just to see. Like,
dude, it's one of those things where it's like everybody's like, yeah, that's canon. Like, it's one of those rare moments where everybody agrees.
So my brother and I are both big fans of DC Comics, Batman specifically, just to name one, and one that was very influential in both of our lives. And in comics, you have a perfect example of a situation where somebody created a long time ago and has been played. Those toys have been played with by everybody, sometimes really good and sometimes not so good. Looking at you, Batfleck movies. Not that it's Ben Affleck's fault, but
I'm still, there's a lot of people to blame there.
Disgusting.
Just straight up shoots people. Just straight up shoots.
It's like they took The Dark Knight Returns and were like, let's make this the worst we can make it.
Yeah, it's like, hey, what every trope can we possibly break and make? Just make it bad. As good as we, let's really get in there. And I mean, let's shit on this. Let's pop a real squad on it.
Which actually leads into perfectly where I was going to go with this.
That's not good.
So I'll just use that as a segue. Lord of the Rings universe, orcs, and their twisted versions of elves is what I think originally is what it's supposed to be.
In Lord
of the Rings. Yes, in Tolkien's universe.
Yeah, but there's two books prior to that Tolkien read where he could have got the inspiration for orcs, because they're both mentioned in those books.
Yes and no. Most of the time, I looked into that, and most of the time when it's mentioned, they're not really talking orcs, so they would probably be more akin to ogres, but they could be considered orcs.
Ogres and goblins. Really, at that point, you were describing at what stage and size they're at. Like, if they're super large, you got an ogre. Mid-size, you've got an orc.
Because how much different is an ogre from an orc when you really get down to it? Well, they're pretty different depending on what universe you're talking about, but yeah, it is like, you could say, oh, that's if you didn't know, you could be like, oh, that's a big orc. And that's what usually when the word is used in like the 1500s and around then, that's what they refer to. In Beowulf, they talk about, you remember the monster Grendel, not the movie. Like, I haven't seen the movie with Angelina Jolie.
The CGI one?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it.
You did?
Yeah, I've seen it.
I have to be.
He doesn't really look like an orc. He looks more like.
Well, they didn't do anything right, I don't think.
No, like.
Because I don't think.
Beowulf just straight up bangs the chick.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think Grendel's mom was hot either, and
no.
Yeah, wasn't it Beowulf's dad? She seduces him too, I think.
It was the kings.
That's what I'm saying. That's where Grendel comes from.
Yeah, it was.
I looked this morning and I could not find where his dad is because there's a character named Grendel's mother, but it doesn't say.
Well, Grendel's mother's the main villain.
Right. Well, and then there's the dragon, right? But I just mean it says he was unnatural birth. It never really mentions where his dad came from in the non-movie version where they did exactly what we're talking about trying not to do, which is picking up somebody else's toys, their universe, their established story and world building, and then just like
fucking it up.
So I want to do something different, which, hey, and that's sort
Another
of where
great example, Dragon Ball Z live action movie, Avatar live action movie,
or GT.
A lot of the Mortal Kombat live action movies. I know a lot of you got a nostalgic touch for that, but it does not hold up. I'm sorry.
Well, it's good that you mentioned Dragon Ball too, because what's his name? Toriyama is not involved with GT, and they just went ahead and made it without him, and that's why that's not canon, right?
Dude, it's just weird. Like the whole Super Saiyan 4 thing is weird.
Yeah, I never liked Super Saiyan 4.
And it's just, I was like, what are we doing here? Like, what is happening?
We put it in the bucket with Halo 4 and 5 and all the other things that we pretend don't exist.
Just bury that down deep and
don't even keep an eye on. Yeah, just bury it deep and forget about it. Bury it deep and forget. So Grendel is something that is described as Orcneas in its story. And Orcneas, Orcneas. That's the word that Tolkien is supposed to have taken orc from.
Okay.
The word itself. This is the guy.
I mean, there is a Latin word where it basically means like.
Yeah, it just means like.
And hell devil.
Yeah, you're talking about.
And I think that's Orcus.
Orcus, yes, but like that's usually referring to a name for Pluto, the Greek god of the dead, which is
not a planet.
Yes.
Sorry. So I don't even think it's to be called a god, demigod.
But when it says that Tolkien, when he says that he took the name from Beowulf, that's where it's referred to as.
Yeah, I'm Sargarrett. I can demote planets all I want. Anyways, moving on. Sorry.
Grendel. This is the guy, the monster that would show up and literally in Beowulf. They're just partying in their mead hall every night, and the singing bothers him. So he goes and attacks them every night for 12 years.
Yep.
He shows up and kills and eats people that are partying at this mead hall. How do you let that go on for 12 years and you keep doing it?
It wasn't like he showed up every night. They just didn't use the mead hall. They were quiet at night.
But he
always lived in fear of Grendel.
But it was so consistent that when Beowulf shows up from Geats or or wherever he's from, his plan is literally to, hey, let's just have a big ass party and then we'll pretend to be asleep.
Show up again, and he fights him naked.
We also learn a valuable lesson there. We also learn a valuable lesson from their plan of going to sleep after they party.
Thunder guns it.
Grendel comes in and he eats the first guy. He just picks up and eats the guy. And the second guy he picks up is Beowulf. So you don't want to be player one because then you get eaten. You're the bait. Player two is
player
the one.
Player one usually gets the plot armor.
NPC, not in this one. He didn't.
Don't be an NPC.
Don't be an NPC. There's your lesson for the day.
Regardless of that movie Ryan Reynolds made about being an NPC. It's not how it happens.
But yeah. So then him and Grendel and Beowulf get into their fight, and he fights him with no weapons, rips his arm off. Grendel runs home to his cave and dies in the cave. Not very orc-like. Unless you're talking like, I mean, Lord of the Rings orc, that could be pretty orc-like. You not haven't seen a Warhammer orc.
Dude, orcs don't feel pain.
Well, it depends on what orc you're talking about.
We're talking about Lord of the Ring orcs, right?
I know in the movie when Saruman, and probably in the book, I'd have to look. I know Saruman says when he's like explaining the Uruk-hai that they don't feel pain. But I think that's one of the things that makes them different from the...
what makes them different is they're bred between orcs.
Right, but that's one of their qualities. I mean, they're not afraid of the sun. They're generally bigger. And like you said, they're supposed to not feel pain. On the food chain. Yeah.
Which, hats off to Lord of the Rings for not only basically setting the bar for orc, but then surpassing the bar by giving them something else. Which I'm almost absolutely certain that's where Warcraft gets Mok'Nathal with the whole ogre.
Oh, the ogre and orc.
Yeah.
Yeah, and half races are always like, or half species are always like a thing.
Natural. Like, that's what people do. Like, that's what, except for some reason, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. Apparently that didn't work out.
Yeah, that's
Probably
pretty much. That's literally as old as Zeus. It's like he banged a lot of stuff that wasn't people.
Yeah. No, he banged a lot of people when he wasn't a person.
And the reverse.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did have sex with animals, didn't he?
He did. He had sex with everything. Literally.
Yeah, that's just a weird culture. I mean, okay, yeah. No, I'm standing by that. You fucked animals. It's weird.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement to make.
I feel like... And if you're
that's setting the bar very high there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not seeing any Warhammer orcs get their arm ripped off and they run away in a cave and die.
No. You're not the Warhammer orcs best orc. If you're gonna ask me, best orc.
I don't think we'll get to that. But I think I don't think anybody that understands Warhammer orcs is going to argue with that. And if you do, then just wait till the series that we bring out, and you'll see it, and you'll be like, okay, yeah, those are the best orcs. Yeah, like we said, like you said earlier, every other time they're mentioned in like that, what was it, the Water Babies book from Charles Kingsley, or whatever his name was. They're
Charles Kingsley.
They are more like ogres, or they're not really described at all. They'll just drop the word sometimes in a list of other monsters.
Yeah, well, dude, a lot of the names like for monsters have been around for ages, like Mandolorian, Wyvern. Hippogriff, Griffin.
Well, this is when we look up like where we first see the word used when things are written down. And it was believed that even though Tolkien probably took the word from Beowulf, that Orkneys, it was believed that Charles Kingsley, who wrote stuff in like the 1860s, was probably what influenced his version of orcs.
Yeah,
because
he directly takes some quotes and
he used the term horse boy, which was also found, which is not for orcs, but that was like one of the main things. It's like, oh, okay, so he's obviously referencing or read this other stuff because he used that terminology. And that's like people putting that together. It wasn't like the Orkneys thing where he told us in a letter that this is where he took that, which is also going to come back later, those letters, because a lot of what we have after Lord of the Rings, as far as those other Tolkien works from J.R. Tolkien, were things that his son found notes for and letters for and published later on, which is going to become important for something I want to ask you about in just a little bit. But just remember that we mentioned it.
Silmarillion?
Yes, the things that led to the Silmarillion and several other books that were done.
Yeah.
So we all know what a Tolkien orc is. If you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, I don't know.
What are you doing?
I don't know how you found us, because if you stuck with us, you're probably into Lord of the Rings. like,
yeah, I mean, like that one, man.
And if you haven't,
Maybe you
immediately
find us under a rock.
You need to like disregard food, your next meal probably, and go seek Lord of the Rings out.
Food.
But if you didn't know, a Tolkien orc, they're human shaped. They're of different sizes, usually, like big and small. They're ugly, filthy, long-armed, and bow-legged. They've got fangs. They use another term throughout the Tolkien books, What's that? I'm sorry.
Generally not pretty smart.
No, yeah, generally not very intelligent, very violent, generally evil. Oh, well, actually, in Tolkien's work, like pretty much evil across the board.
Yeah, so there is no such thing as a good orc.
There's a quote from someone else that was writing about Tolkien and something that I looked up today that literally said that. They were like, the only good orc is a dead orc.
Yep.
Is what they said, which is how Sargarrett feels.
100%. If it's a real orc, it's got to go. It's got to go. Not that Warcraft thing of work. That's not an orc.
It's interesting that you mentioned
I call them prairie elves. That's what they are.
Prairie elves. It's more like cave elves.
No, cave elves, because night elves are cave elves.
Furlblogs are cave elves.
No, Furbolgs are the sons of Ursoc.
I know. I was just making a dumb joke. They're not very good elves. Furlblogs, I mean. If you don't know what a Furlblog is, well, those are outside of Warcraft 2. Also, those are in.
All those terms are out. Well, I don't know about night elf, but
dark elves.
I say, yeah, it's just a dark elf.
Except I feel like dark elves usually get like a
bad rap.
Yeah, they get they're usually on the evil side of things, or at least chaotic. Night elves are only evil if you are in their forest and they don't want you to be there. And chances are, if you're in their forest, they know about it. Yeah, like you're either about to die or they're trying to decide.
Yeah, I would say the only
they knew about you way before you knew about them. Right. Orcs are also called goblins sometimes in the Lord of the Rings universe.
They're generally same race.
They are actually they are synonymous. The pale orc, the one that is in The Hobbit, he gets like really changed up in the movies from the book. But he's the one that's gigantic. He's bigger than most Uruk-hai when you see him in the movie. He's an orc named Azog, and when Gandalf is trying to convince the dwarf at the beginning of The Hobbit to go on the journey that he does, he tells him about this orc that is Gandalf refers to him as a goblin named Azog, and basically the descendant of Azog, which his name I think is like Bolg of the North or something like that. He's also in the movie version of The Hobbit. But in the books, Azog, his dad, is dead. He gets killed by a dwarf. And there was a guy who wrote a paper that we'll talk about in a little bit where he said that basically orcs sometimes are motivated by things besides just pure evil. Because basically that orc is going for revenge against the dwarves because it does not specifically said because his dad died, like, oh, I miss my dad, so much as, oh, I hate these dwarves particularly now.
Well, then, so think about it. As an orc, they basically directed and assaulted his family.
Exactly.
Like, they died to a dwarf.
But implying that, like, vengeance is a thing that humans feel too, and like.
Well, no, it shows that they grasp some concepts, but they're generally destructive concepts.
Right. This guy wrote a paper that I think will upset you in part. Why? But it was interesting. We'll get to it. But he mentioned on that saying that, where is it? Basically that was evidence of a time when orcs were motivated by something beyond just being purely evil. So the fact that they wanted like vengeance for their family, or like that there was some kind of slight against their line.
Yeah, but once again, that's no more than like it makes the family look weak when they lose to something like that.
Right.
You're so below them. Like, so in order to get that power back, he needs to wipe out that entire line. So I don't think it's really so much as like vengeance as much as it is like just making a statement, really.
Well, and that's what I'm saying too, is it's not clear. Like this guy's taking some liberties, hence vengeance and familial honor. That's a good word. Familial honor motivate the assault more so than some inherently evil nature. Vengeance is undoubtedly one of the all too human impulses driving the orc attack, especially after Gandalf had killed the great goblin, governor of the orc village in the Misty Mountains. Azog, who is the descendant, or the one that is the sire of Bolg, they're both alive in the movie still. And I think Bolg gets killed by Legolas because we needed Legolas to do Legolas things in the movie.
Yeah, he wasn't in The Hobbit. I don't know why he was there.
You know what I heard the other day, speaking of Legolas and Lord of the Rings? He talks to Frodo one time throughout the entirety of the story.
You have my bow?
That's all he says to Frodo throughout all of the movies. And then that weird little smile that he gives him in the nod at the end when they're all like...
There was a lot of weird smiling in that movie. I still don't get that.
Somebody said, and I haven't done this yet, but they're like, if you pay attention to Legolas, because Legolas didn't have a whole lot of lines throughout the entirety of the movies, that Orlando Bloom, I think is his name, was like really overacting in his facial expressions. Apparently, if you watch The Lord of the Rings and you always focus on Legolas's face, it's a pretty trippy experience. I haven't done that yet, but the next time I watch the movies, I'm gonna try to do that.
I think that'll be a pretty good experience. You see Legolas having these weird facial expressions all the time.
Everybody loved Legolas. I feel like as a kid, like I saw one time where it was like, hey, life is growing up as a SpongeBob and slowly becoming Squidward. In Lord of the Rings, life is growing up with Legolas being your favorite, and then you get older and you're like, Gimli is the real, is the best. But I got sidetracked. I was saying Gandalf refers to that orc as a goblin, and the rest of the times that he's referenced ever.
And in Warhammer, they have Greklin, and they even have goblins in regular Warhammer, not 40K. Like I say, that's just a common trope out of everywhere. The only where it's not common is once again is Warcraft, and in
Warcraft isn't
Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, they're not consistent on anything.
Yeah. Elder Scrolls,
no, not Elder Scrolls. Warcraft.
Yeah, there's no real rules to Warcraft. When you can have unholy beings casting light, like it's a D&D nightmare. It's just like there's no structure here anymore. It's like it's turning into Gary's mod pretty quickly. I think that's okay. How many of you actually play Gary's mod?
Lots of people play Gary's mod, I think.
Not as much as you think.
Well, I mean, if you're not a PC gamer, then you won't even know what Gary's mod is, probably.
Not only you be PC gamer, but you got to be someone who knows how to mod.
It's like the sandbox game of sandbox games.
Yeah, because Valve's awesome.
The thing that launched all this conversation is something that my brother and I have talked about at length, and taking it back to the Batman and the Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett stuff. You have a situation where Tolkien didn't create orcs, but he basically created orcs as pretty much everyone knows them. If you say orcs to pretty much anybody, even people that are not into fantasy stuff, they're going to think of Lord of the Rings and they're going to be like, oh yeah, I know what those are. Like,
yeah, that's where the general consensus would know.
I
General
think that
person who doesn't really read fantasy books, play D&D, World of Warcraft, MMOs, RPGs, JRPGs, you know. Wow, there's a lot of places you could run into this stuff.
As we've talked about it off the podcast, this is the mold against which all other orcs were originally made from, probably, in the different games and stories and different mythos. Yeah. So he didn't invent orcs, so maybe this is a little bit different than, like, my brother and I have had this conversation before when you're talking about Batman.
You got to remember, orc is a mythos creature from our world. It's something we believed at one time actually existed.
That is, I'm sure, like, yeah, I'm sure, like, that is true.
Like,
I haven't seen.
All of our mythological animals were things we thought once existed.
Sometimes, yeah, I think that's fair to say. Like, but I just mean, this isn't like, it's not the same thing as in Batman where it's like, at times before, I've asked my brother the question, it's like, okay, well, if you make something and you make it and it's yours and it's your IP, your intellectual property, or it's something that you invented, generally, if somebody else picks that up and tries to, like, write a story with it, that's going to be like fan fiction, like, and it's not going to be canonical.
And we all know how we feel about fan fiction.
There's some that's really good, and then there's porn. Like,
good or bad, I still don't want to read it.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Well, I don't. Let's not go there. I was gonna say, has there ever been good? Well, you could say like something like. Now, it's not fan fiction. It is canonical. Like when you take the Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. But these are people that had nothing to do with what George Lucas originally imagines as Star Wars. But they picked it up and they play with it later on. And you could be you could be on the side of, oh, no one should be allowed to do that ever. Or you could say that you never get certain stories if people are not allowed. Because eventually, and in the case of Tolkien, that person dies. And then it's like, well, does that story die with them, that universe? Like, because if you look at the Silmarillion and the things that came afterwards, those are things that were written by Tolkien. But they were published by his son, and he was trying to get it ready to be published before he died. Tolkien, J.R. Tolkien himself. So it's not like, and you can think whatever you want to. We don't have the certainty on that. There's a lot of people that have said, oh, this was like a greed grab. But if they were just about greed, then the rights to the movie, The Silmarillion, would have been sold a long time ago, because I believe the Tolkien family is not super happy with even how the original trilogy was portrayed and sort of turned into an action movie. I don't think.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think they're a fan of The Hobbit, given that was like it was that times 10, it seems like, the action movie thing. I mean, the interesting thing is some of those things were letters, like when I said earlier that, oh, Tolkien told someone in a letter that he actually wrote and sent that's published since. That's where he took the word orc from. That's when he says, oh, yes, I took that from Beowulf. There are letters that were drafted and never sent, okay? So Tolkien himself did not. It's like he wrote an email and then he was like, for whatever reason, he didn't send it. So he didn't mean to put it out there. And now it's out there and it's like, did he mean... Does that count? You know what I'm saying? Because this is the problem. Like, let's say you don't let anybody play with your toys and you're still alive, right? Like you take somebody like George R.R. Martin or somebody who writes a story. A lot of times they'll get interviewed and then people, this is like the best ones, they've got in their head answers for, oh, well, I have this really particular question about something in your world building in your universe. And then a lot of times that's where we get things like the Silmarillion, where it's like, oh, well, this is what they said. It wasn't in the original story, but here's some context. If it's just one person that is the keeper of that lore, is it like always fluid? And if it hasn't been mentioned, if they say it, then it just becomes true? Like, do they have to publish it? Like,
so in that particular situation, it kind of goes one of three ways.
Okay.
When someone creates something it's theirs, like, that
I would agree with
is
that.
The general consensus. Until they start putting it out there and the world starts buying it, does anyone else get a say? And really, even then, you don't really get much of a say, because remember, the whole reason you bought it in the first place was because you liked what they did in the beginning. So,
and that person did it, right?
Yeah, that doesn't like make an open invitation for the world to come in and make edits.
Right.
Now, if they sell the rights, that's up to them. If they say, hey, this is fine. Like, I just feel like it should be up to the choice of the author. Like, so
they decide who does and doesn't get to.
It's like, hey, this story, like, it's kind of like, it's real close and personal to me. Like, it's a lot of it's autobiographical. A lot of the characters are. Okay,
what about this situation? I'm with you. Like, let's say you've got a story and you're like, okay, you can write a side story, or you can write an offshoot. You can do your own The Mandalorian to my Star Wars.
Oh yeah, no. As long as you slap elsewhere around the border, you can do whatever you want. Like,
but let's say you do that. You let me do that.
That's the fun of elsewhere.
Let's say you let me do that, and then The Force Awakens it. Or what is the one Ryan Johnson did? I don't even remember what it's called.
And I think Elsewhere is the appropriate outlet for those. It's like, oh, I want to put a story. It's like, yeah, okay. Like with Elsewhere, you can have a story, and it's like, yeah, this is just something that was made up by somebody. It's not real to the actual like main.
Elsewheres they're non-canonical stories. Yeah. It's a term from comic books.
Or at least not in DC anymore. They are canonical in DC. I know that's
because of
We're not going to
multiverses.
go over that right now. Dear
Well,
God.
multiverses sort of break everything.
Multiverse, dark omniverse,
They break everything
crisis events,
and fix everything. They both make things better and worse. Like,
dude, they're like, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, so they redid it again, and I'm like, they're gonna redo it again. It's just what's gonna happen.
it's like, what about the reality where Hitler cured cancer, Morty? You just don't think about it. That's the problem with multiverses.
Comic already.
I'm sure it does. Like, so let's say that they take that thing that you've allowed them to do, and then they do something shitty with it. They do the last season of fucking. I know you haven't watched Game of Thrones, but like,
yeah, I'm not gonna.
That's well, no, I'm not. You don't have to touch on Game of Thrones. I'm saying like he let them tell the story that he hadn't even finished yet. So
yeah,
he can't take that. There's no takesy backsies on that kind of stuff, or is there?
Dude, no, that just shows you how much what the author made it for. This goes into like what I was saying the first time we went over this about it being like comic book characters. He literally created that under the sense like a comic book character. This was created to sell over and over and over
hold on.
again.
Like you're saying if it's an Elseworld, it's non. If you're saying it's an Elseworld, you're saying it's non-canonical. But to me, if you're telling the person, no, you get to write a story with my toys, then you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. If you also tell them,
no, you're selling out. That's what you're doing.
It's an Elseworld. Well, yeah. I'm just saying, like, but let's say you don't make it an Elseworld and it's canonical and they write it and you don't like it. They can't take it back at that point. Like that's part of it.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. You're selling out. If it's elsewhere around the border, who cares? Let them like, as long as they're cutting you in for, using your copyright, your characters, your universe, as long as they pay those appropriate tributes, like Elsewhere is fine for people to write. Who cares? Like, that's fun stuff. Elsewhere is fun for that reason.
What about when it's not Elseworld? Are you completely against,
dude?
Someone you're completely against, like, just for people that don't know.
I don't know how to put this. Like, I guess the Mandalorian's a great way of putting it. Like we said earlier, when you pick up the pieces and you actually understand how they were meant to be played with. Like when you I feel like they actually got down what Lucas wanted, and I feel like they actually got down what viewers wanted. I think they found the great middle ground. Everything. I mean, like for Mandalorian, I was sold on the first scene.
Oh yeah, that's
the
fantastic.
second that happened, I was.
But the Mandalorian is the exception.
I'm here for the ride,
not the rule. Usually, it's not great.
Yeah, no. And honestly, I feel like Mandalorian should be the standard because. That's a great show. It's like, look, this is Star Wars, and they even do things that that I
did fan service
like.
well. Yeah,
like something like I wouldn't generally not like Baby Yoda or something like that. I just think it's stupid. But
dude, they've had episodes.
The story.
They've had episodes where, they have turned straight up stand-up comedians into.
Oh yeah, no, it was a Bill Burr. I think it was Bill Burr.
Dude, all the Bill Burr episodes are fucking great.
Yeah, dude. He even does I'm sorry, Bill Burr does a great if you don't think Bill Burr does a serious role, he does. He does a great serious role.
This is a great character.
Yeah, dude. That dude's got range. And not just because he's got a third robotic arm.
He's all range.
Yeah, dude. Give Bill Burr more work. Give Bill Burr more roles.
If you had a third robotic arm, does Bill Burr
masturbation.
Does Bill Burr's character jerk himself off with his robotic arm?
Does having sex with a sex doll count as masturbation? Because this is essentially the same thing, just more intricate.
Yeah, it's a question for the ages.
Yeah, the second question, which would feel better, silicone or latex?
I mean,
What, do you know? Which one?
No. I'm just saying. I'm thinking of those videos where you've seen a robotic arm grab something and then crush it. That's what I was thinking of when I laughed just now. Is you'd have to be like, well, what if it malfunctions and rips your dick off?
Hey man, that's just the risk you got to take, I guess.
Then I guess you just get a robot dick. Then
yeah, if you think about it, if you make an autonomous sex doll, there's a chance it's going to become sentient and just fucking kill you.
Fuck and kill you.
Yeah, fucking kill you.
Oh,
that way to
man.
go, I guess, you know?
Well, we were talking about shit in the first episode, and now we've gotten
Talking
to
about fucking fake
jerking
women and
yourself
shit.
off
What
with
if you want to fuck something other than a fake woman? You know, we're just talking about
you
what
do
we
you.
would like. Yeah, you do you. If
Whatever
I come in,
floats your
got a
boat.
weird latex horse, I'm gonna be like, no. No. I feel like you should go to jail. Jail.
Jail. And a happy new year to you. In jail. Yeah.
Oh God, no, that's great, man. We're coming up on that time, but no, the most important thing, October's coming around. It's time to farm that headless horseman mount. Every year I've missed it because I wasn't playing. You know, fuck you, man. That's why I got to get that shit.
No, dude, sometimes those things, it's like people with whatever they're calling the big love rocket now. I forget what it is that Blizzard named it to.
I don't care for the big love rocket. Oh,
I'm just saying, you look at some of the numbers and it's ridiculous how many times, like, there are people that, you need to go every character that you can on that then.
Every character you can on what?
On your, the headless horseman mount you want.
Oh yeah, no, that's
that was a raid, right?
Why I have all those 60s, Lee?
That's not why, but
that's literally why. Okay, well, yeah, it's not literally why. I just enjoy playing the game in other classes. Yes, I know life at some.
We're getting too much into WoW. I didn't want to do that, but like, man, season 4 wants you to play alts, but like Blizzard does not want you to play alts because
no, dude, because I hate that legendary crafting system.
Yeah, man.
I don't want my motivation.
I don't want to buy the item. I want my other characters to have, but they can't do any. And I haven't been doing any of that content anyway. But
I've been playing a shit ton of Reforged. Reforged is fun.
No, I played some of that recently. I started playing the campaigns last night, and that was a lot of fun. But like, hold on, I would like get back to the thing about the question of playing with somebody else's toys or somebody else playing with your toys. Like an interesting thing. I totally
thought you were going to talk about playing with somebody else's dick. I was like, you really got to bring it back to the robot jerking off machine.
Oh my God. Playing with somebody else's robot sex arm. No,
oh God.
So God damn it. Go watch The Mandalorian and look at Bill Burr's character. He has a third arm that is a robot arm that he uses to shoot people on screen and does God knows what with off screen.
I call it the Greedo killer.
Yeah. Well, George Lucas is the Greedo killer. Yeah.
It wasn't Greedo. He'd even get a shot off. Dude,
it's interesting.
That stupid edit they did that.
Yeah. Everybody's
just like, why is
everybody's seen
it? What is love? Just
just do it like on a loop. That's fantastic. Has that been made?
That's what I'm saying. Why haven't I seen it?
If it's been
made, why haven't I seen it?
I will make it tonight. I will make it tonight.
I blame you.
I will make it tonight. Well, no, then I have to put Night at the Roxbury in, and that'll get copyright strike, so we can't do that.
Dude, no, just post it as a meme on Reddit or some shit.
Well, sure. I just mean I wanted to put it in the video. Right? Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, it's like the ocean.
Everybody's shitting and swimming in it.
Like,
so
I'm gonna be honest. I'm convinced that the majority of Redditors is like multiple of the same person.
There's a lot of that. There's definitely a lot of that.
Dude, I'm saying, I bet you Reddit's numbers like would go down by like a third if you were only allowed one count.
If it's on the internet, people are botting. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. Like,
dude, people want to feel important on message boards, and I don't know why.
So if you let somebody else play with your toys,
we're making a stream.
Yeah,
I don't stream.
You let somebody else play with your toys. That's on you. What they do with it, you've opened the door.
When you give the permission. Like, that is strictly on you.
It's out of your hands. It's out of your robot sex hand at that point.
Hang on a minute, dude. My face keeps going real dark. And
you need more lighting.
I'm running Dark Lord right now. That's the cooking show.
So here's what I've got for you.
Hey, Hype, you know what I bet you can't do? I bet you can't name every state that starts with M.
I'm not going to do that. He's doing something that no one else is going to get. This is a very inside joke. This is a very inside joke. We have a word, a code word that is one of those states that if you say it, you're opening yourself up to what something. It's a dumb thing that we used to do.
Dumb? If it's dumb, then why don't we just answer the question?
because I don't want it to happen to me. Because it's dumb and I'm dumb.
Really?
Dumb, and you're dumb. No, I'm not dumb. That's why I'm not going to answer. We'll tell you that at some other time. When you sometimes let somebody else, like the people that write anything in Shadowlands or BFA or a lot of the WoW story, sometimes you have to, like, the only way to fix that stuff, and honestly, it's not a great thing. People try to retcon things. It's the equivalent of a takesy backsy in a story and say, let's have a redo. It's interesting.
In the DC universe, it's called a crisis event.
It's just called a different universe. Yeah, we're literally a crisis event on Earth, whatever.
Yep. And we're going to have a crisis energy going through everything.
But we talked about something that you don't like. We don't like retcons, and you don't like orcs, which get humanized.
No, I don't like humanized orcs. I think it takes away from an orc. I think you're trampling on it there. Like, so I understand why people are like, oh, you don't have to be traditional. I get it, but like, water is wet. I don't care what your perspective is.
You could talk at length about why
it makes things wet, because it is wet.
Point is, he's not a big fan of orcs. Orcs should be monsters, and he doesn't like.
I like it when they're monsters.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Battle for Middle Earth 2, I play Mordor.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
But it's interesting because in my research this morning, I found some statements that were made by Tolkien over time after the books came out. The books being the original Lord of the Rings. But as he got older, apparently there was a lot of different things that he said. And this is one of the problems with, and it leads to retcons, and when you only have one person as the keeper of the lore. He sort of changed up how orcs came about. And there's different places that it's referenced. Treebeard, the big ant guy, tells, I think it's Merry and Pippin, that ogres are like a twisted version of ents that were created by
Sauron.
The Shadow, yes. Actually, it would be, I think, Melkor, who's the guy that came later on known as Morgoth, which is like Sauron's boss way before the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. He's the Balrog down in what's it called?
That is the Balrog of Morgoth. That's one of his.
That's what Sauron is. Sauron's a Balrog somewhere.
Sort of. They're kind of like corrupted angels, which is also what one of the explanations that lesser corrupted angels are one of the later iterations of what Tolkien says orcs are. It seemed like as he got older, he didn't like the idea. Treebeard tells them, to finish that off, that ogres are to ents what elves are, or orcs were to elves. Like they were both like a twisted version.
Twisted. It's like what beastmen are to men in the Warhammer universe.
They were made that way.
Yeah, to mock them.
And there are several different versions of orcs as we go on, or according to Tolkien, that get put out there. And originally, it's also said, just to list them quickly, originally we see that they're just bred by Morgoth, and they're just like evil outright, and that's what they are. Then later on, we see that they're said to be like a corrupted and a twisted version of something else. Like they reference several times that in this universe, evil can't create anything. And you have to remember that Tolkien's work was always like somewhat grounded in like a biblical philosophy with like with a god type like character that is like that's benevolent and is good. I'm just saying it's important for the story because what he says is that that's the only thing that can create something. All evil can do is corrupt or change something or mock it. Like good makes things, evil mocks things is what they say. And Frodo apparently met references to Sam once that the orcs were like twisted by a shadow or ruined by a shadow. So apparently Tolkien later on said that these were, in the Silmarillion, I think it was, that over time, elves, these like East elves, which also they're called like Avari or something like that, and they might actually be the dark elves of the Middle Earth universe, that they slowly get like tortured and corrupted and enslaved into what we know as orcs. And then later on, he says that maybe, oh, actually, maybe they're beasts in the shape of men, because apparently they reproduced like elves and men, is what they say. And he says in a letter that actually did get published in like 1962 that there must have been at one time, this is Tolkien saying this, that there must have been female orcs. And that's always strange to me. Not female orcs, that would be strange to anyone in the Tolkien universe, I think. But it's strange to me when you have the creator of a universe answering a question to someone else about their universe, and they talk about it like they're not entirely sure. Because I've seen George R. R. Martin do the same thing, where he's like, I think it would be like this. And it's like, well, you're the guy that is creating all of this. So I would think that...
Well, dude, there's a degree of mystery there, because when it's a mystery to even the author, like, that leaves it very open-ended. And
it does, and that creates problems
in the world. I don't think very many, but
well, it allows for creativity, and it also can create problems. I agree, but it's just another one of the things that comes with being like the sole lore keeper. But he says at one time there must have been female orcs, and that, oh well, these are not anything corrupted. These were beasts in the shape of men and half orcs. And then later on, he changes that because he didn't like, and I couldn't find where this was referencing, but it said that Tolkien didn't like the idea of elves being, or of the orcs being like a twisted version of elves. And then so he says later on that they come from the heat and the slime of the ground or something like that, I think was how he worded it, like, which is actually like pretty close to like the origin of humanity. If you look at biology and talking about like primordial soup and the lightning, you've got the energy, which is the heat. And then what did he call it? The slime? Was that the word he used? But it sounded like that to me. And I was like, oh, well, maybe he just like was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go with the science explanation, which is how we see them in when Saruman's making his Uruk-hai, right? They come out of that like slimy, goopy stuff in the ground with all the fire, and you got like an orc pit.
Yeah, so
this is just Tolkien like retconning effectively orcs. And then the last thing that his son says he found in his notes was that later on he said orcs were a corrupted version of men instead of elves. And he said, this is what I think he wanted to be last.
It doesn't make sense though, because wasn't that what the Wildmen, the Haradrim were? Yes, they're another version of that, and this other person in this paper references that as well. But his son said, this is what I think he meant for his last, like what this is what he wanted it to be. But he's dead at that point, and the story's already come out. So then it's like, well, and that's where I get into like taking those draft emails which were never sent out, and it's like, well, effectively that's like plucking a thought from his head almost. You know what I mean? It's like if he didn't put it out there,